Hello? Who's this? Where are you? Son of a bitch. Cool story, bro. Is that all you got? No! Hey guys, welcome to Henshin Highlights. I know it's been a while, and as you can see, you know why I've been gone. I got my ass kicked by Kamen Rider. But don't worry, I'm taking care of that. You guys can watch the video I just did while I continue to train for my rematch. Hadani equals A!
Standing by. Complete.
Okay guys, let's get down to business. Today I'm reviewing Kaizoku Sentai Gokaiger. Now this series marked the 35th anniversary of the Super Sentai franchise. With such being the case, Toei pulled out all the stops, bringing back all the old Ranger suits, more than a few cameos of the original Ranger cast, and even some of the old mechs. The series ran for a whopping 51 episodes, along with a couple of movies which I'll review at a later date. On this episode, I want to go over the entire series as a whole. I'm going to overview the characters and the story as a whole. So let's get started. For the characters, I first want to go over the heroes, since they are the most important part of this entire series. Now, one thing I can say about the main cast of Gokaiger is there are a lot of parallels with the cast of One Piece. They all have certain personality traits based on different Straw Hat Pirates. I'll start off first with Gokai Blue, Joe Gibkin. Now, his personality is very similar to Roronoa Zoro. He's kind of a serious swordsman type, and he's got kind of a murky past. He started off as a soldier for the Zangyak Empire, the main villain faction of the series. One key point in the story is his connection to one of the Zangyak generals. His original name was Sid Bamik, but he eventually became the modified cyborg being known as Barizorg. Sid was Joe's mentor and taught him everything he knows about swordsmanship. Throughout the series, Joe did everything in his power to try to set Sid free from his Barizorg form, but eventually he realized the only way he could free him was through killing him. A man of few words and a complete and total badass. That's Joe Gibkin in a nutshell. The next character I want to discuss is Don Dogoyer, the Usopp of the group. Now, just like Usopp, Don's biggest defining characteristic was his cowardice. Don's nickname from the rest of the crew is Hakase, or Doc, which was given to him because he's so knowledgeable about things, and because he's also the ship's technician. Now, Don isn't given much of a backstory. Initially, Gokai Yellow, Luca Malefi, tricks him into trying to fix the ship. At first he refuses, then eventually he changes his mind and decides to join the crew and fix the ship on his own. The key point about Don is he's kind of the butt of jokes on the show. And in a certain episode, he gets tired of it and decides to trick the rest of the crew, creating a fake news article saying that he was actually a legendary dragon slayer from far away in the galaxy, who had mysteriously lost his memory.
What a twist!
But this turned into a major character moment because the rest of his crew was in danger and he had to be the only one that could save them. So what does he do? He mans up and fights off a bunch of them long enough to free Captain Marvelous so they can save the day. Not the toughest member of the crew, but he does what he can. That's Don Dogoyer. And now it's time to show the ladies some love. We're going to start with Luca Malefi, otherwise known as Gokai Yellow. Now, Luca was the first female to join the crew. Her personality can be attributed or compared to Nami from One Piece. Slightly tomboyish, but very feminine at the end of the day. And also like Nami, she loves the dough, and any kind of treasure. Luca's backstory was probably one of the most tragic. She was a refugee from one of the planets that the Zangyak Empire had taken over. Amongst those refugees, it was her, her sister, and various childhood friends. They would do what they could and steal whatever they had to get by. Eventually, her sister died from sickness. At that point, she vowed to try to raise enough money to buy her own planet where both her and her friends could live together peacefully. However, it wasn't until Marvelous came into the scene and saved her and her friends from a Zangyaka attack that she saw that her dream could actually become a reality. Eventually in the story, one of Luca's friends who was a refugee managed to earn enough money to give her so she could buy a planet. But she decided to stay on as a member of Gokaiger and let her friend handle the business that she wanted to do. The girliest tomboy you'll ever meet. That's Luca Mililfi for you. Now I want to talk about the princess of the crew, Gokai Pink, I'm de Famille. I'd compare I'm to Nico Robin. She's classy, very ladylike, and only speaks when she has something important to say. And in many ways, she's also the crew's spiritual center. Am's backstory is that she's the princess from a planet that was destroyed by the Zangat. Not only that, her family was burnt alive before her very eyes. Her major character moment is when she's faced with the killer of her parents, and she completely loses her composure. After initially losing their first confrontation in that episode, she realizes that she may very well die once she goes for her revenge. So she decides to go alone. Luckily, the crew knew what she was up to, and they weren't about to let her go at it alone. Even going so far as reminding her why she joined the crew in the first place, which was to be a beacon of hope for the refugees of her planet. I'm de Famille, a princess who's anything but a Mary Sue. Now I want to talk about Gokai Silver, Gai Ikari, easily the silliest member of the Gokaiger crew. Now in traditional Super Sentai fashion, Gai's backstory is significantly different from the rest of the crew. Where the rest of the Gokaiger are space pirates from different planets, Gai's an Earthling. And where the rest of the crew doesn't know much about Super Sentai aside from knowing how to use the Ranger Keys, which are the source of their power, Gai knows everything there is to know about Super Sentai. He's a fanboy. And if I had to compare him to any Straw Hat pirate, it would be a combination of Frankie the cyborg and Brooke the musician. He has the outrageous fashion sense of Frankie, and he also has like that silly way of speaking of Brooke. Now Guy's backstory was kind of weird. He got his Super Sentai powers through a dream sequence. It's Sentai logic, just go with it guys. The spirits of Abare Killer, Dragon Ranger, and Time Fire visited him and gave them their respective Ranger keys, along with his Gokai Cellular and his own Ranger key. Now Guy never really has like a really heavy defining character moment. He kind of just already wants to be a hero, so he doesn't need to learn it, and he doesn't really have any major tweaks that he needs to work out. But man, does he get a lot of power. In fact, he's the only Ranger in the series who gets a significant power-up early on. He obtains one of the ugliest power-ups in all of Tokusatsu. Gokai Silver! Goldemon! He gains it by combining 15 of the various 6th Ranger keys that he has in his arsenal. If I had to surmise why he has so much power, it's because he's a fan. And Toei wanted to give a fan that kind of power, kind of in the way that how a lot of Tokusatsu fans have really big imaginations. I know I do, and I'd probably do something like that myself. The way he acts is any way a Tokusatsu fan would act if they fell into the world of Super Sentai. That's Gai Ikari. And last but certainly not least, Captain Marvelous. Now to be fair, when I first heard the name I thought, really? Captain Marvelous? But then as the series went on, I thought, you're damn fucking right his name is Captain Marvelous! Look at him fuck shit up! Sorry if you can't tell, he's my favorite character in the series. And quite possibly my favorite Red Ranger of all time in both Power Rangers or Super Sentai. If I had to compare Marvelous to any One Piece member, it would easily be Monkey D. Luffy. Only a little more mature and with a little more brain power. Marvelous is the glue that holds this entire crew together. He's proven throughout the series time and time again that he's the strongest member of the Gokaiger crew. And although he's a badass character, I like that he still has his flaws. He's very brutish, slightly disrespectful, and he has fear just like any other character in the show. And man does he know how to dress. Look at that jacket. I so want one. Actually, I kind of am waiting to get one for cosplay. Another thing I like about Marvelous, as a Red in general, is that even though he's not an idiot, he's not super serious. He knows when to have fun. He knows that life's not always about taking things so seriously, too. I also feel out of all the Gokaigers, he's the one that acts most like a pirate. Because again, he's very disrespectful to authority. Even at certain points where former Sentai members come asking him for favors, or even asking for their Ranger keys back, and he's just like, fuck you, they're my keys now. But even though he's a brute, he also has a strong sense of justice. He won't hurt anyone that doesn't deserve it. And he'll even go out of his way to save someone who's in danger, even if there's no benefit in it for him. Now, Marvelous's backstory has the coolest Sentai connection of all. Before he became a Gokaiger, he was a part of a crew called the Akaki Pirates, which consisted of his friend Bosco, Navi the Parrot, and another one that a few Sentai heads might remember. Oh, a dude by the name of Akared. And for those of you who don't know who Akared is, he is the embodiment of all Red Ranger spirits. When Marvy and Akared first met, Marvelous actually had found a random Ranger key, and Akared needed the key so that he could bring it back to Earth. Of course, Marvelous wasn't about to give it up, so the two fought out a little bit. Marvy lost, and Akared decided to make him his protege. Now, the reason that they were collecting the keys was because Akared and Marvy both wanted to find the greatest treasure in the universe. Sadly, Akared was never meant to find the greatest treasure with Marvelous and Bosco, because Bosco decided that he wanted the treasure for himself. So he set up Marvelous and Akared and joined the Zangyok. During the Zangyok onslaught, Akared sacrificed himself so that Marvelous could go on with the Gokai Galleon, their spaceship, and find the rest of the Ranger keys and get the treasure in his stead. Given the connection between Marvelous and Akared, Marvelous is so driven to find it in order to keep his promise to Akared. One thing I can say about Marvelous as a leader is there are very few times when he doesn't pull his weight as a leader and needs someone to knock some sense back into him. Usually it's another Red Ranger, but like I said, he usually knows how to get shit done. Captain Marvelous, the name says it all. Now I want to talk about the villains. There's not much to say, they were kind of forgettable, but they had a few interesting points. I won't talk about the entire cast of villains, only the ones that had like significant stories. First off, I'll start with the leader of the first half of the series of the Zangyok Empire, Walsgil-sama. Now, Walsgil was probably the most useless villain for most of the series. All he did was whine like a bitch, flail around when he got hurt or when he didn't get his way, which was most of the time. Sadly, we didn't get any real introspective into his character until the end of his run as a lead villain, where we find out that being the prince of the Zangyok Empire, he didn't get a lot of respect from most of the nobles in the Zangyok Empire. In fact, even though he was technically in charge, his general Damaris was the one that was sent to babysit him to make sure that no matter what, he didn't get hurt. And he also pointed out that Barizorg was the closest thing that he had to a friend during most of his life, even though he was responsible for making him the way he was. This relationship was made all more apparent when Barizorg was defeated by Joe. Swearing to avenge Barizorg's death, he decided to use a gift that his father, Akado's Guild, left him, a mecha known as Great Walls. Unfortunately, Great Walls was no match for the might of Kanzen Gogaiho, meeting his end with a rocket fist of justice. Now I want to talk a little more about Barizorg, Joe's friend, or should I say former friend. As previously stated, Barizorg was once known as Sig Bamak, a soldier in the Zangyok army, and Joe's mentor. Actually, both he and Joe were meant to become modified soldiers for the Zangyok army, but Sid managed to save his life and allowed him to escape. However, when the two met again, Barizorg had no memory of their past relationship. That was because one of the Zangyok science officers wiped out any previous memories that he had as Sid Bamak, so he was the perfect soldier for Wall's Guild, and his personal bodyguard. Barizorg's program was so detailed, even when he found out the truth, it had no effect on him. With every trace of his humanity gone, death was the only thing that could save Sid's soul. And now we get to talk about my favorite villain in the series, Bosco Tal Jolokia. Now, if I could describe Bosco in 2 words, it would be magnificent bastard. I mean, he didn't give a fuck. This is a guy who betrayed his entire crew, and later on in the series, he betrayed the only friend that he had during most of the series, his partner Salia, Robot Monkey. If you ask me, Bosco was more of a pirate than all of the Gokaigers put together. He wasn't so much interested in taking over the universe, he just wanted the treasure for himself, and he had the means to do it. He had the special trumpet, which could drain the Super Sentai Grand Powers from their bodies, and he could also use them to use the Ranger Keys to summon armored forms of the spirits of the Super Sentai Warriors. So think of him as Kamen Rider D in only way more interesting. It's shown midway through the series that Bosco is one of the strongest villains in the series. Even to the point where when he reveals his armored form, the Gokaigers are no match for him with their current strength. And it's only in an epic one-on-one showdown between him and Marvelous that he meets his end. All I can say about Bosco in general is he should have been the final boss of the series. Now I will discuss Damaras, the strongest man in space. Now, as previously stated, Damaras was Wallace Gill's babysitter. He wasn't really a bodyguard, but he definitely knew how to fight. His job was basically to make all the tough decisions that Wallace Gill was too incompetent to make. Even going so far as to impede the Gokaigers whenever he found out that they were going after the greatest treasure in the universe, trying to gain the great Super Sentai powers for themselves. Damaras was very good at his job, but when Wallace Gill died, the backlash from his father Okado's Gill was that much worse. Finally see how seriously he takes his job when Okado's Gill gives him a chance to redeem himself by taking down the Gokaigers on his own, where he finally proves that he truly is the strongest warrior in the universe. Hell, had it not been for the fact that Bosco stabbed him in the back, he probably would have killed the entire team on his own. I guess I'll just round up the rest of the Zangief villains. There was Insarn, the main science officer of the Zangief Empire. There was Durando, Okado Skill's right-hand man, and Okado Skill, who I guess he was kind of a threat, but he didn't really have much of a presence. Those were the villains for you, though. Now I'll talk about another major part of the series, the cameos from previous Sentai warriors. There were just way too many for me to name all in this review, so I'll try to keep it short and sweet. Long story short, different Sentai warriors would come in, make a cameo, and give their blessing to the Sentai team to use their additional greater powers so they could unlock the greatest treasure in the universe. Now, some cameos were better than others. I wasn't really too wild about some of the lesser ones, like the Alba Ranger one, but one of my personal favorites would have to be the Hurricaneger Gokaiger team-up. Now, that was a two-parter, and it was worth the effort. In the TV series, it was the only time they got the original team to reprise their original roles and work together with the Gokaigers. Well, I guess I should start talking about the story now, since I've gone over all the character stuff. It starts off with the series beginning not too long before the main heroes of the series come up. The first attack from the Zangief Empire, with all the previous Super Sentai teams, from Go Ranger to Gokaiger, teaming up to fight them off. They fight hard with all their might, but ultimately they realize that their strength's not enough. So they use the last of their power in a desperation attack, destroying the entire fleet, but sacrificing their powers, taking the forms of Ranger Keys and sending them into deep space. Fast forward some time later, and we have the Zangief Empire chasing down the Gokaigers in the Gokai Galleon. They've already collected all the Ranger Keys, the team's already been assembled, and now they're reaching Earth so that they can go after the greatest treasure in the universe. Pretty much the plot in a nutshell. If I say anything more, it'll be a spoiler, and I want to ruin this awesome series for you. Now I'm going to do an overview. What I really thought about the series as a whole was pretty good. It was well written in certain parts, but the villains as a whole were forgettable. I wish they had taken more time to flesh out the characters of the villains, not just giving them one or two episodes towards the end of their run to make them seem interesting. I understand it's an anniversary series and all, and that you're trying to focus more on getting cameos and showing off all the cool toyetic stuff, but give us something worth watching, you know? For the main cast, I had no major problems with them at all. Any kind of faults they had, they just helped to humanize them more. Another gripe I had is, why couldn't they do some kind of power-up form like they've done in previous Sentai? That's always been a big part of like Super Sentai in recent years, how they get an additional power-up. And the way they did it at the end with just having them show the Super Ranger forms at the very end, that just felt cheap. I would definitely recommend this series if you've seen at least one or two Super Sentai series previously. But if it's your first Super Sentai series, I wouldn't recommend watching it by yourself. Watch it with someone who knows a little more about Super Sentai so they can fill in any holes or any references that you probably won't get.
Well, that's it for Henshin Highlights, guys. Thanks so much for watching. But before I go, I have a little message for Mr. Rider 1. That was really cool what you did there. You know, sneaking up on me, coming out of nowhere and hit me with a rider kick. but I've been training since last time. And I got a little message for you. You see, with all the training I've been doing, I've come to a decision. I'm not just going to get you back. I'm going to destroy anyone who supports riders. And I'm going to destroy you very systematically. And you and everything you hold dear. So basically what I'm saying is, in the immortal words of Captain Marvelous, Subete Rider wa Oregatos! See you at Anime Boston.